The sudden shriek pierced through the quiet Sunday brunch at the trendy downtown cafe. All eyes instantly turned towards the commotion coming from Karen's table in the corner. "You thief! Give me back my purse this instant," she screeched, her face flushed with rage as she pointed an accusatory finger at me. I sat there, stunned, unsure of how to react as the other patrons watched the spectacle unfold. Only moments ago, we had been engaged in a seemingly innocuous conversation about the weather. But now, Karen had somehow convinced herself that I had stolen her designer handbag. "Karen, I don't know what you're talking about." "I haven't touched your purse," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and measured. "Don't lie to me. I saw you reach into my bag when I went to the restroom." She spat, her nostrils flaring. "Now hand it over before I call the police." I could feel the eyes of the entire cafe burning into me as I frantically searched my own belongings, desperately hoping to find some proof of my innocence. But there was nothing. No bag, no wallet, no sign that I had taken anything that didn't belong to me. Just as I was about to suggest that we both search the table for the missing item, Karen suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her expression shifted from one of unbridled fury to something akin to bewilderment as she slowly reached into her own oversized tote bag and pulled out her purse, which had been there all along. The cafe fell silent, save for the sound of Karen's ragged breathing as she stared at the bag in her hands. I watched, both relieved and slightly amused, as the realization of her mistake dawned on her. I don't understand," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was right here the whole time." I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could utter a word, Karen's expression hardened once more. She glared at me, her eyes narrowing to slits, and for a moment, I feared she might try to physically attack me. "This isn't over," she hissed, snatching her purse and storming out of the cafe, leaving a trail of bewildered onlookers in her wake. I sat there, unsure of what to do next. Should I follow her and try to clear the air? Or should I simply let the incident go and hope that Karen would come to her senses and realize how utterly ridiculous she had behaved? As I contemplated my next move, the waitress approached me, a look of concern etched on her face. "Is everything all right, miss?" she asked, her eyes darting towards the exit where Karen had just disappeared. I let out a heavy sigh, running a hand through my hair. "I honestly have no idea," I admitted, shaking my head. "But I have a feeling this is just the beginning." The incident at the cafe had left me rattled, but I tried my best to shake it off and continue with my day. As I walked home, I couldn't help but wonder what had prompted Karen's outburst. We'd have been acquaintances for years, but I had never seen her behave in such an irrational and aggressive manner. When I arrived at my apartment, I was greeted by a flurry of frantic text messages from mutual friends, all inquiring about the confrontation. Word had clearly spread quickly, and I found myself repeatedly explaining the absurd situation to those who hadn't been there to witness it firsthand. Later that evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone suddenly rang. Expecting it to be another concerned friend, I was surprised to see Karen's name flashing on the screen. With a deep breath, I answered, bracing myself for round 2 of her verbal onslaught. "Hello, Karen," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I owe you an apology," she said, her voice surprisingly shaky. "What happened at the cafe was completely uncalled for, and I'm mortified by my behavior." I blinked, caught off guard by her unexpected contrition. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied cautiously. It was a very strange and upsetting situation. "You have no idea how sorry I am," Karen continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I've been feeling so on edge lately, and I guess everything just boiled over. But that's no excuse for how I acted." I remained silent, unsure of how to respond. Part of me was relieved that Karen seemed to be acknowledging her mistake, but I couldn't shake the lingering unease I felt about the entire ordeal. "Look, I know I've been a real jerk lately," she sighed. and I understand if you never want to speak to me again. But I was hoping we could maybe get together and talk. I'd really like to make this up to you." I contemplated her request, weighing the pros and cons in my mind. On one hand, the idea of voluntarily subjecting myself to another confrontation with Karen's erratic behavior didn't exactly fill me with excitement. But on the other hand, her apology seemed sincere, and I couldn't deny that I was curious to understand what had triggered her outburst in the first place. "All right, Karen," I finally said. "I'm willing to meet up and talk, but only if you promise to keep a cool head this time." "I promise," she replied, her voice laden with relief. "Thank you, truly. I'll text you the details, okay?" As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but wonder what I was getting myself into. But something deep within me told me that this encounter, for better or worse, was going to be a pivotal moment in my relationship with Karen. The next day, I found myself seated across from Karen at a cozy cafe, my fingers nervously drumming on the worn wooden tabletop as we both sipped our respective drinks in an awkward silence. After her outburst at the previous brunch, I had half expected Karen to cancel our meeting, or at the very least, arrive in a state of barely contained rage. But to my surprise, she greeted me with a sheepish smile and a sincerely apologetic demeanor. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice soft and tentative. "I know I had a lot of explaining to do." I nodded, offering her an encouraging look. "I'm listening." Karen took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to her cup of herbal tea. "The truth is, I've been going through a really rough time lately. My job has been incredibly stressful. My bills are piling up. And—" she paused, her lips pressed into a thin line. "And my husband and I have been talking about getting a divorce." I felt a pang of sympathy, despite my lingering unease. Divorce was never an easy thing to navigate, and I couldn't imagine the kind of emotional turmoil Karen must have been experiencing. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Karen," I said, my voice genuine. "That must be incredibly difficult." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It is, and I guess I've just been on edge, constantly worried about money and the uncertainty of my future. I know that's no excuse for how I behaved, but—" her voice trailed off, and I could see the shame and regret etched into her features. I reached across the table, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "I understand," I said softly. "Stress and anxiety can make us do and say things we don't truly mean." Karen looked up at me, her eyes wide with gratitude. "That's no way to excuse my actions, but I appreciate you listening. I truly am sorry for what happened, and I hope you can forgive me." "Of course," I replied with a reassuring smile. "We all have our moments, Karen. The important thing is that you've acknowledged it and are trying to make amends." She nodded, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Thank you. It means more to me than you know." We continued our conversation, delving deeper into the challenges Karen was facing. I listened intently, offering words of empathy and encouragement wherever I could. And as the minutes ticked by, I couldn't help but feel a sense of connection and understanding begin to form between us. Perhaps this incident, as unpleasant as it had been, could be the catalyst for a stronger, more resilient friendship. After all, weathering life's storms together often forged the deepest bonds. Over the next few weeks, Karen and I found ourselves spending more time together, our once strained relationship gradually blossoming into a genuine friendship. I was impressed by her willingness to open up and confront the underlying issues that had led to her outburst at the cafe. As Karen navigated the emotional turmoil of her impending divorce, I made a concerted effort to be a supportive and understanding presence in her life. We would often meet for coffee or take long walks, during which she would pour her heart out, unloading her fears and anxieties without fear of judgment. In turn, I did my best to offer a listening ear, empathetic advice, and a shoulder to lean on. It was a delicate balancing act, as I didn't want to overstep any boundaries or take on the role of therapist. But the more I got to know the real Karen, the more I felt compelled to be there for her during this challenging chapter. One afternoon, as we strolled through a serene park, Karen suddenly stopped in her tracks, turning to face me with a determined expression. "I've decided to file for divorce," she announced, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. I grasped her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I'm proud of you, Karen. That can't have been an easy decision to make." She nodded, her lips curving into a wistful smile. "It wasn't. But I can't keep living in this state of limbo, constantly walking on eggshells. I deserve better, and so does my husband." "Absolutely," I replied, my tone reassuring. "You're taking a brave, important step, and I'll be here for you every step of the way, no matter what." Karen's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she pulled me into a tight embrace. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." As we continued our stroll, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and admiration for Karen's newfound resolve. The woman I had once seen as entitled and erratic. In the weeks that followed, Karen's divorce proceedings began to take shape, and I witnessed firsthand the emotional toll it was taking on her. She would often arrive at our meetings looking visibly drained, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Despite the challenges, however, Karen remained resolute in her decision to leave her marriage. She spoke openly about the growing disconnect she had felt with her husband, as well as the constant financial strain that had become a source of endless conflict. "I just can't keep living this way," she confided one afternoon over tea. "I know it's going to be difficult, but I have to do this for myself." I nodded sympathetically, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I'd admire your strength, Karen. Divorce is never an easy path, but you're handling it with so much courage." She offered me a watery smile. "It helps to have a friend like you in my corner. I don't know what I'd do without your support." As the weeks turned into months, I watched Karen navigate the legal proceedings and emotional minefield with a tenacity that both inspired and humbled me. There were moments of overwhelming frustration and despair, but she refused to let them consume her. One particularly trying day, I found Karen sitting alone on a park bench, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Without a word, I slid in next to her, offering a silent presence as she openly wept. "I just want this to be over," she hiccuped, her voice thick with anguish. "The fighting, the lawyers, the constant uncertainty. It's all just too much." I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "I know, Karen, but you're being so strong, even when it feels impossible. Just take it one day at a time, okay?" She nodded, leaning her head against my shoulder. "I'm trying, I promise. But sometimes I just want to give up." "That's understandable," I soothed. "But you've come too far to turn back now. You're going to get through this, and I'll be right here with you every step of the way." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, I could feel Karen's body slowly relax against mine. The weight of her burdens seemed to lift, if only for a moment, and I knew that our friendship had grown stronger in the face of her struggles. Whatever the future held, I was determined to be there for Karen, no matter how difficult the journey ahead might be. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, Karen's stress levels continued to escalate. She had always been a high-strung individual, but the constant legal battles and financial uncertainty were taking a severe toll on her mental and physical well-being. One afternoon, as we sat in a cozy cafe discussing the latest developments in her case, Karen's phone suddenly rang. The color drained from her face as she listened to the caller, her knuckles turning white from gripping the device. No, this can't be happening," she muttered, her voice trembling. "How could they do this to me?" I reached across the table, placing my hand on hers in a gesture of comfort. "Karen, what's wrong? What did they say?" She looked up at me, her eyes wild with panic. "They're trying to take the house. My husband's lawyer is claiming I'm not contributing enough, and they want to force a sale." I felt my heart sink as I watched the devastation wash over her features. The house had been Karen's one constant in the midst of the divorce upheaval, a tangible reminder of the life she had built with her soon-to-be ex-husband. "That's not fair," I insisted, my own anger bubbling to the surface. "They can't just take your home away like that." Karen shook her head, her fingers trembling as she clutched her phone. "I don't know what to do, Jenna. I've already spent so much on legal fees, and now this. I'm barely scraping by as it is." I reached across the table, grasping her hand firmly. "Hey, listen to me. We're going to get through this, okay? You're not alone in this fight." She blinked back tears, her expression a mix of gratitude and despair. "I don't know how much more I can take. It feels like everything is crumbling around me." I know. I squeezed her hand reassuringly. "But you're stronger than you think, Karen. We'll find a way to keep your home, I promise." As we sat there in the quiet cafe, the weight of Karen's burden seemed to settle over us like a heavy fog. I could see the exhaustion etched into her features, the once vibrant spark in her eyes now dimmed by the relentless onslaught of challenges. In that moment, I made a silent vow to do whatever it took to support my friend. I wouldn't let her face this battle alone, no matter how daunting the odds might be. Karen had come too far to give up now, and I was determined to be her unwavering ally in this fight for her future. In the weeks that followed, I found myself immersed in Karen's divorce case, offering whatever support and resources I could muster. Together, we pored over legal documents, strategized with her attorney, and explored every possible avenue to prevent the forced sale of her home. It was an arduous and emotionally draining process, but Karen's determination never wavered. Even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds, she refused to give up, her resilience fueling my own resolve to see this through. One particularly tense negotiation session with her estranged husband's lawyer left Karen visibly shaken. As we walked out of the courthouse, she turned to me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The stress is taking over my life, and I'm starting to feel like I'm losing myself." I placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, offering a sympathetic nod. "I know this has been an unimaginably difficult journey, Karen, but you're doing so well, and I'm so proud of you for not giving up." She swiped at her eyes, letting out a shaky breath. "I just want it to be over. I want my life back, and I don't know if I have the strength to keep fighting." "Hey, look at me," I said, gently tilting her chin so our eyes met. "You've come this far, and you're not alone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get through this, one step at a time." Karen searched my face, seemed to draw strength from my unwavering support. Slowly, her features softened, and she managed a watery smile. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Jenna," she murmured. "You've been my rock throughout all of this." I pulled her into a warm embrace, feeling her body tremble against mine. "That's what friends are for, Karen. We're in this together, no matter what." As we stood there, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of the city, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride and admiration for the woman in my arms. Despite the immense challenges she had faced, Karen had never lost her determination to fight for her future. And in that moment, I knew that with our combined strength, we would emerge from this trial even stronger than before. The final chapter of Karen's divorce saga unfolded in a dramatic fashion, with a twist that no one, least of all Karen, could have predicted. As the deadline for the court-ordered home sale loomed, Karen's estranged husband made a surprising last-minute offer. In a move that caught everyone off guard, he agreed to buy out Karen's share of the property, allowing her to retain ownership and avoid the forced sale. When Karen relayed the news to me, her voice trembled with a mix of disbelief and relief. "I can't believe it," she said, her eyes wide. "After all the fighting, all the stress and heartache, he's just letting me keep the house." I reached across the table, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "That's incredible, Karen. I know how much this home means to you. This is a major victory." She nodded, a watery smile spreading across her face. It is, but I can't help but wonder why he's doing this. There has to be a catch somewhere. I shook my head reassuringly. Don't overthink it, Karen. Sometimes, people surprise us. Maybe he realized it wasn't worth the battle anymore. Karen sighed, her shoulders visibly relaxing. I suppose you're right. I'm just so relieved, Jenna. This whole process has been a living nightmare, but now it's finally over. As we sat there, sipping our coffee and basking in the newfound sense of peace, I couldn't help but reflect on how far Karen had come. From the irrational outburst at the cafe to the unwavering determination to fight for her future, she had proven herself to be a woman of remarkable strength and resilience. I'm so proud of you, Karen, I said, meeting her gaze with a warm smile. You've handled all of this with such grace and courage. You should be very, very proud of yourself. Karen's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she reached across the table to pull me into a tight embrace. I couldn't have done it without you, Jenna, she whispered. You've been my anchor through this entire storm, and I'll never be able to repay you for that. As we pulled apart, I could see a renewed spark in Karen's eyes, a glimmer of the vibrant, confident woman I had known all those years ago. The trials she had endured had not broken her. Instead, they had forged her into a more resilient, self-assured version of herself. You don't have to repay me, Karen, I assured her. That's what friends are for. And I know that you'll pay it forward in your own way when the time is right. Karen nodded, her lips curving into a grateful smile. I will, I promise. And Jenna, thank you for everything. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but feel a sense of profound satisfaction. Karen's journey had been a roller coaster of emotions, but in the end, she had emerged victorious, reclaiming her power and her future. This was not the end, but rather the beginning of a new chapter, one that held the promise of healing, growth, and endless possibilities.